The Scots went over with the Vikings, and the grandfather of Rosslyn Chapel, the great explorer, most northerly point is the northeast tip of the British mainland. Land's End in Cornwall is the southwestern tip of the British mainland. And between the islands, you have the sea barriers to stop anybody sailing through. So it was very quickly put into action. You know, obviously in the early days it's easier to build out of wood than it is to build out of stone, but the Stone Age people in Orkney, they only had little scrubby bushes. They didn't very precious, very prized material. You know, they kept that obviously for things that they really needed it for. These two standing stone rings, they are in the process of excavating the most amazing Stone Age complex. So we are looking at something, so they'd all have their own front door, and he had an octagonal table so that nobody was at the head of the table. Sounds like rubbish to me. If he'd been living in Scotland, he should have just banged their heads together. Yeah. But that is the story. Recently, actually, he wouldn't do what he was told, so they ended up recommending him for an award. Docked at St Margaret's Hope. I don't know what she was hoping for.
Off the island. Hoping for warm weather. Well, just a minute.
This was pretty windy. It's the windiest I've seen it.
Right there.
Ronald Say.
It's the windiest I've seen it all year.
They're bracing themselves.
Look at all the cars.
Processing plant in the country. There is experimental with tidal power. So people from the cream that skimmed off the milk goes into the cheese and into the ice cream. And the other industry married their daughters to the kings of Norway or married Norwegian princesses in an attempt to get their hands on these islands. So it was one of our kings. So that is barrier number 4. They're in reverse order. So crossing from South Ronaldsay onto Bursey.
So they just literally blocked me.
So they created big concrete blocks, they put them in steel meshes and they dropped them down onto the 7 of the 56 German ships that were scuttled there in 1919. Clearly here.
I think it's a blurry picture.
There are scuttled ships. Those were deliberately scuttled to make the passage as difficult as possible for any U-boats to try and get through these channels.
Oh, we got some on our side, Mike.
Off the wrecks and down to the German wrecks. The Royal Oak is particular though. It's man camped out on this island and you see just how exposed it is. So Domenico Ciocetti was the mastermind behind the Italian chapel, deeply religious man.
We've got a chapel as well where we go walk, and it's a very big thing.
Buddha.
No, not yet.
People of Scottish descent to come home. So 2009 was the first year of the homecoming, and here they were celebrating John Rae. Canadians, you'll see it, we'll go as slow as we can. We can't slow too much on the corner. And so the supply ships went out from the Orkneys over to Canada, and John Rae, the Canadians know John Rae. John Rae was one of the 3. You see its medieval cathedral towering over the town. So at the end of the day, before we head back to the ferry, we'll stop off in Kirkwall for just a photograph really.
Melted cheese against
Oh, thank you.
For about 1,000 years. Now we're going to stop you here in the you understanding what the village was like. So the visitor centre, there's a little exhibition on life in Stone Age times. You've maybe heard of the Stone Age diet. Yeah, this if you go back to the Stone Age.
What does it say?
Smaller side exit or entrance.
I'm just seeing what it is. Very faded.
Interesting to see. In about 10 minutes' time, we're going to be driving down towards the ring of Brodgar. There. How long it would have taken them to have walked here, dragging their stone to add it to the stone circle. So every year there are new discoveries. It's called the Ness, like Loch Ness, the Ness.
Yeah.
Between Canada and Scotland, 15% of Canadians claim Scottish descent. And John Ray was the friend of the Inuits.
I didn't mean.
So this is barrier number 1. This is where the U-boat, 14th of October 1939, sailed through this at high tide into Scapa Flow, circled around for a couple of hours.
Modification of metal, wouldn't it?
Most people have those kind of.
So that's us back on the Scottish mainland. Did you enjoy your day trip to Orkney? Cruise ships. Venice is sinking and there's too many tourists, and life for the people of Venice has just become unbearable. Yeah, everybody that moved to Pictou was from the northwest Highlands. So that's lunch, and then we drive down. We get to Skye about 5:30. We're staying in a quaint place where we could have powered the whole country with wind power. The problem with wind power is you do need the wind. So you have to be a resident. Foreign investors can buy up chunks of the Scottish land. To the northwest Highlands, leaving Caithness, the northeast corner behind us, which is flat, the lowlands beyond the Highlands. We're moving back over towards the mountainous part. It's one of the least populated areas of Scotland, just the County of Sutherland, because the Duke and Countess, the Duchess Countess, there were, yeah. If you come to the beach in Scotland, you keep your clothes on. So living up here, tourism is one of the industries. The forestry is.
Say that there ever a season up here where it's clear at night that you can actually see the stars?
Oh yes. Yeah, you would have you. I told you that Bonnie Prince Charlie, the French had sent him a ship full of gold. Well, it came up and sailed up here. So Bonnie Prince Charlie Smith sent 1,500 men up here to try and recover the French gold. The French ship stopped. The Mackays chased the French. The French are there with their bags of gold. They apparently threw some of it into the water to our left. So Loch is a lake, Gaelic. Ben is a mountain in Gaelic. Strath is a big, flat, wide river valley, and a glen is some kind of corral for sheep
Well, I
or
think if
something
you
like
had
that.
one trail,
Yeah,
then
it
it's
just,
a mountain
it didn't
picked a
look old
good
enough.
pathway.
It didn't look like it was 2,000 years old.
established it.
Places, especially letting you off for photographs. So they've turfed the roof there. That's quite unusual. Yeah, you've got heather and other vegetation growing on the roof of that little boathouse. Yes, the real argument for hammering this day is to get to Glenfinnan before it closes. That's why you could stop there. In ways it's a better one, but other than that, there's no reason. There's your deer over in the far field. They're going to end up on somebody's plate. Venison, a very lean meat. There's a house. I don't know why it's there. Tiny little house on an island.
Oh, look, there's the dam.
Oh, and has it got an Ur Willie on it? Do you know what? Is it Ur Willie with a tenant's lager? And you use that as like a mattress to sleep upon.
My granddaughter, 5 years old. Okay, and we just used to those.
In France, is that obviously
It's funny, you know, they say
the driver into the French.
Yeah, yeah. And it dislocated up. It was a clean, hooked up, so they put it back in, and they got him a brace. And they still
Heather for the ones that, for people that it's a little different. The hummocks over there. Sure you mind your-
And they had a head, we just drove off and say the chip is alright.
That was another viewpoint that could have done what's alongside, so it's probably not good luck.
Kate, there's a pipeline that seems to be going up the hill just about 9 o'clock.
So that's,
Oh, it's coming
that's
down.
the power station at the bottom. On Loch Broom, so it's a sea loch, and it's a sheltered spot inland on this sea loch. If you were emigrating, well, there was forcible emigration. Sometimes they just literally threw you off your land onto a ship. You could buy your passage, and they promised you all sorts of things you didn't necessarily get. I mean, 100 of them are inhabited. That's Ullapool ahead of us to the right hand side there. This is Loch Broom. It's a sea loch and it goes out into the Atlantic a little bit further down.
What? You can come up in.
At Thurso this morning we drove along the coast and down and we're over to the west. So Thurso and Ullapool are the two towns. If you were so the ferry port just ahead of us on the left. So this is your lunch stop. The ferry boat in apparently is quite slow service.
Yeah, it's 400. 400. And that was at a $500 a second.
I think I remember somebody approached me when I was shooting through a chain link fence and the camera was wanting to focus on the chain. He said, too many pretty things to photograph.
The thing that freaks me out, people, they hover over the shop too long. I dumped my bag, and I sold the used $7,000 box.
This is the new lens.
Okay, this is
It only goes to goes to 270. But I don't have to switch lenses because the other one was magnifying, but I couldn't get it.
if they have hydroelectric power that's coming out of their ears. But I like the
See, there's that U-shaped gap through the water and Skye, the mountains in the far distance.
Yeah, what's it? Rainbow is still there, but it's down on the ground now.
Oh, I see it.
Oh, yeah.
This is the old ferry port over the water. So she threw chains over to the islands, and if you wanted to pass, you had to pay. And once the ships had paid Saucy Mary to pass her castle, she would bare her breasts at them. Mary's restaurant, you could buy Saucy Mary t-shirts, just in case you thought I was making it up.
That would be fun for Carol, something.
And there's the King Hacken bar. So there's a bar in our different eras. The Grampians are younger, for example, than some of these ones. But I would, Andy's going to be able to answer your geological questions on that.
Does have to be kept under control. Because Skara Brae is an island, it's got limited grazing. So if the population... As the road straightens, in front of us you can see a set of mountains around the head of the loch. There's salmon in the river for more than a century. So you could say that the crofters fished it out. Cooling. Have a look at the rock, and then you'll appreciate just how much rust is dissolved into it. And rabbits. But the main part of any eagle's diet is made up of carrion, but producing because it's a distillery. And the little ferry you can see is heading out. Around this next bend on the left, we'll pass the entrance to the Aros Centre, which is Skye's restaurant and cinema complex. July and August, the true population here on any given night is well over 12,500. That's a quadrupling of the resident population. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that for about 250 years, the Portree was...
Thank you.
That'd be pretty good. Have a good wine cellar.
Yeah, good wine cellar.
And Portree's only street is here on the left. Now, just because the population here can only really be traced back to the 1820s, that is not...
Yeah.
to sea level in a big pipe and pass through a turbine on the seashore to generate hydroelectric power. In the clouds. They are very different to the Coolins. Instead of being volcanic, they are... After all, crofting is a year-round commitment, but nobody earns a living from crofting. It's something you do in your spare time, alongside a...
There's some babies.
Oh, there's a good one down there.
A little one with a baby.
Yes, I told them to be not English. It's Gaelic. Scots Gaelic. And Scots Gaelic is standard, but all taught in Gaelic. And that is a little bit more...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Now we're just passing by where Bonnie Prince Charlie landed in 1745. So he grew up in France, brought up to believe that he was the rightful heir to the British throne. So his grandfather, he was brought here to this coast, and he met up with clan chiefs. From the throne, they threw out the Scottish king, James II, didn't want him. They brought in his daughter, married to William of Orange. Now, and go out into our sea loch.
The foundation of Fort William, that's all that's left now. What side is the Fort William going to be on?
On the right hand side.
I don't know what red means. Oh, that makes it a video.
That green patch over on the other side of the roundabout, that was the position of Fort William.
Where is it?
Which is the laundromat, or there is the individual garment service when the hotel charges you £2 per pair of socks. Stuart decided he wasn't dropping you off there, ladies. He's going is Scotland's ice climbing centre. So there's winter climbing in Scotland, and